starters, forget everything you ever imagined a drug smuggler to look, think, or sound like. Now, meet Howard Marks.
I think the stereotype of the drug dealer is probably wrong. I've certainly met many charming, engaging, intelligent people within the marijuana trade. Most of them don't get caught, which is perhaps why I expose other more than the others.
If Mr. Marks seems uncommonly cheerful for someone in a slammer, perhaps that's because there's nothing common about it.
Howard is a fascinating person. He's charming, he's engaging, he's brilliant.
That's Marks's defense attorney, Stephen Bronis, talking. Remember, this is a man who's seen lots of drug dealers.
But I've never met anybody quite like him.
And even a less sympathetic observer like Tom Cash, the U.S. drug agent largely responsible for busting Marks, offers this backhanded compliment.
I described Mr. Marks from all the travels that he had as the Marco Polo of the drug world.
This may be the only federal defendant whose IQ matches his 8-digit prison number. During the 1960s, he earned 3 advanced degrees from England's prestigious Oxford University. But seduced by the era's peace, love, and drugs anthem, scholar turned smuggler. Very radical, very quotable. He parlayed a pot-smoking pastime into a world-class drug ring, spanning 6 continents and netting $175 million in total revenue. Marijuana, grown in Middle and Far Eastern fields, was turned to hashish in a factory in Karachi, Pakistan. Beginning in 1970, he reportedly shipped 75,000 pounds of marijuana and 40,000 pounds of hashish into the U.S. and Canada, often to the sounds of rock and roll.
How should be put into the speakers and taken out in America?
So in the speakers of a rock and roll band sat pounds of marijuana or hashish.
That's right, yes.
Any rock and roll bands that we might know?
Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Eric Clapton, Genesis, Pink Floyd.
Though Marks says the bands never knew of the scam, British Customs did, and first arrested him in 1973. But he disappeared before his trial, eluding the police for the next 6 years, an international fugitive to his residence.
Describe the 6 years you were a fugitive.
Probably the best 6 years of my life. Wonderful 6 years. Never having to be on call for anyone. Never having to give one's phone number to anyone. Changing identities as often as I wished. I found it fascinating.
Call it Howard's Walter Mitty phase. Marks, alias Donald Nice, alias John Goddard, alias Roy Green, and with each fake passport, a new persona.
What was your favorite personality?
I think a film producer. I enjoyed being a film producer very much.
Ended abruptly in 1981. Arrested at an English pub and put back on trial, he then stunned prosecutors by revealing and proving he held yet another occupation, British spy. Recruited by a classmate from his Oxford days, Marks persuaded the jury his drug smuggling schemes were just a front, used to help his government uncover arms smuggling by the Irish Republican Army. The jury acquitted him.
The events that led to Marks's actual arrest had nothing to do with cannabis smuggling from Britain to America, but later cannabis smuggling from South America to Britain on a vast scale. The largest known consignment of drugs ever to be smuggled into Western Europe was landed on this beach off Western Scotland on December the 29th, 1979. 15 tons of Colombian cannabis, grass, with a street value of over £22 million, was piled high on the beach at Barnabock, Kerala, then taken up to the farm storehouse.
We're only 3 miles from Oban here, but in winter it's as desolate a spot as you'll find anywhere in the Western Isles. The 15 tons of marijuana are loaded on the beach behind me, and you can still see the tracks made by the trailer that carried them up to the house. The boat was anchored up in the bay here. It was a large ocean-going tug that had made a non-stop voyage to here in Scotland from Colombia, South America.
The Carroll had accommodation for 40 people and was protected by an M16 machine gun. The tug had taken 3.5 weeks crossing the Atlantic from South America with its expensive cargo. This is just a quarter of the massive consignment that was smuggled in. These sacks are worth £5.5 million. It wasn't for 3 months until March 1980 that customs men learned that vast quantities of Colombian grass were on sale in London. The gang were highly organised. They kept records on this computer. And they kept the paying-in slips for all the money they banked and then moved out of the country. £1,300,000 by the time the customs men stepped in. Howard Marks was accused of importing this massive amount of drugs and had to explain why he'd done the gang's accounts. During a lengthy Old Bailey trial last autumn, he explained his involvement by saying he was keeping an eye on the gang for the Mexican security services. Marks was acquitted.
Gave Marks legendary status in the British press. Brits loved it, the police hated it. And when a book came out detailing Marks's bravado and the government's bungling, drug cops around the world could only smolder.
And the fact that he was so vocal and so public with his escapades as a dealer, was he sort of rubbing your noses in all of this? No, I don't think he rubbed our nose in anything. One of the peculiar arguments that Mr. Marks makes is that the marijuana drug trade is sort of a kinder, gentler version of the cocaine heroin drug trade. Do you buy that argument? I have not seen any part of the narcotics traffic that was, as you say, kinder and gentler. I would like to find the first less violent narcotics trafficker so that I could put him in the Smithsonian.
To finally put Howard Marks in a federal prison required an elaborate trap. At Marks's new home on the Spanish island of Majorca, DEA agents wiretapped his phone, recording what they say are his cryptic drug deals. Then Anthony Moynihan, an old chum of Marks and a notorious English lord implicated in everything from white slavery to murder, was brought in as a government informant. That's him on undercover videotape, arriving at a meeting he set up between Marks' brother-in-law and a DEA agent. It was this thing that finally stung Howard Marks.
Lord Anthony Moynihan. You used to call him a friend. Good friend. What would you call him now?
A bad friend.
Eventually, a jury will have to decide which of these two old friends to believe, the admitted drug smuggler or the convicted con artist. Either way, if Marks takes the stand,
I would pay to be admitted to that portion of the testimony. He certainly will be bored. I can assure you of that. When Howard Marks finally walks into a Florida courtroom later this year to begin his trial, you can expect some surprises. After all, he seems to like it that way. Remember, in his 1981 trial in England, he pulled a legal rabbit out of the hat by convincing jurors he was a British spy. Well, this time, with his act playing on an American stage, he's already hinted to us that there's another trick up his sleeve.
You have to remember that something like 7,000 tons of marijuana get into this country every year. And the government doesn't know how. And of course they know how.
Marks will reportedly claim that drug shipments, including one that brought 4,800 pounds of hashish into the Alameda Naval Air Station in California, were arranged with the complicity of unnamed U.S. military officials.
More than one military official involved?
More than one, yes.
And what happened in one military base undoubtedly happened at others?
Yes, sir, in this case happened in the same military base or naval station more than once.
Though you might expect the DEA to deny that, don't.
If a military base is not secure from drugs, where can anything be secure? Well, that's not that unusual. Are you telling me that we have some kind of perception that military bases are bastions of walls that are impenetrable? I don't really believe that.